Hey everyone, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast. This show is about helping you grow as a coach by standing on the shoulders of giants. Each show, you get a different mentor in your ear. The early motivations, the successes, the failures, the tools, the tricks, and the insight into where the industry is going. All of it so you can make your own dent in the world. Remember, success leaves clues. Now, without further ado, on to the show.
Welcome to another edition of the Coach Catalyst podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Whitwer. Today on the show, we have Jen Broxterman. She's a Canadian registered dietitian and sports nutritionist. She's an entrepreneur, founder of Nutrition RX, which offers in-person and online nutrition coaching. She's the creator of Prosper Nutrition Coaching Certification. She's a nutrition content writer for Precision Nutrition. And most importantly, she's just an all-around awesome person. In this episode, Jen and I get into the story behind her becoming a writer for Precision Nutrition. We get into her entrepreneurial journey, how she keeps all the balls in the air from CEO to nutrition coach to mentor, and growing and scaling her two companies. And she does this because of a really cool system that she's developed. We dive deep into that system. And then she teaches us one scheduling secret that's allowed her to grow her nutrition coaching company from 3 to 7 coaches, more than doubling the size and revenue in just 1.5 years. Jen is one of my favorite presenters, and you will soon find out why. I hope you enjoy this episode. Jeniffer Broxterman, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. This is really kind of a part 2 for us. So we had a recording once, but the technologies of the world were not happy with us. So we get part 2, which is awesome. All right. So I want to kick this thing off with a story that you told me before. And a lot of people know the company, Precision Nutrition. You've done a lot of writing for them. And actually, this is how we met initially. And I don't know if I've ever told this story, but Emma, who is on our team at Coach Catalyst, sent me an article and was like, "This is a really good article, and you should have this person on your summit." And we were looking for speakers on one of our summits, and she's like, and then she actually connected with you, and then like ultimately passed your name along, and then you were on our summit, and like the rest is history. But you've done a lot of writing for PN. Probably people listening to this have read a lot of your articles because you're a great writer and presenter. But tell us how you got started with PN to start writing with them initially.
So it was a total accident. Like the universe had something just fall out of the sky and into my lap. And I'm so grateful because it opened so many doors. So as you said, I like to present. I do a lot of public speaking about nutrition. And so I was invited to this kind of international exercise and fitness and nutrition summit. And I had to follow John Berardi, one of the co-founders of PN. And I don't usually get too nervous to public speak. Like I've done well over 100 of these sort of keynote presentations, but like when you follow John Berardi, like, you got to be on your A game. And I knew he was in the lineup of speakers at the event, but I didn't know my talk was placed directly after his. And he often comes kind of just for the half day when he does these events because he was coming from out of town, et cetera. And so he stuck around with his daughter and was like, well, we'll watch the afternoon. And then I think we were on the panel of like speakers for Q&A at the very end.
Yep.
And as soon as I finished, I did a talk on the science of how food manufacturers make food hyperpalatable, the addictive, dark nature of, they like to spin it as it's free will, it's your choice, kind of what cigarette companies would have done way back in the day of like, this doctor recommends this brand of cigarettes and it's free will. And if you get addicted, like that was your choice. You could stop at any time. And so I disseminated the research of like how that's not actually true when we look at these hyperpalatable foods. And so John Berardi, or JB, pulled me aside afterwards and he's like, that was one of the best talks I've ever seen in all the seminars I've ever attended. Will you write an article for PN? You need to just start working for us. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, yes, like I want to give you a job. You need to like tell this again and on a platform for us. Like our platform needs this. And so it started off as an article and an infographic. And then I started public speaking and helping with their textbook revision as a dietitian and kind of adding some of that lived experience and motivational interviewing. And so I accidentally started to work for Precision Nutrition. And JB and I became good friends. We text all the time. He helped me a ton through my cancer journey. I've traveled down to, he's a snowbird. So his wife's Canadian, he's American. They go back and forth between Canada, US. I went like whitewater rafting with him and his kids, and we saw like hundreds of wild horses in Arizona. And I was like, I still have to like pinch myself. Like, how was it that I got invited to this seminar, did my talk, and suddenly I got to become friends with one of these like unbelievable leaders, mentors,
Right.
Industry icons. But I was so honored that he was like, that's a great talk. You need to come work for me.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, that's how I got to be working at PN.
You should have said, JB, thanks for the opening act, and then went on, because he opened for you.
Yeah, if only. No.
I love it. I love it. And so we'll kind of get into how that happened. How old do you know? How old was PN at the time? Were they still kind of in their infancy, or were they kind of starting to become more established in the market?
They were kind of middle-aged.
Okay.
So I'll tell you another funny story. The same summit where I met him was another speaker. I attended this summit years ago because it's his old supervisor for his PhD is the event organizer. And when I was an undergrad student, I remember attending the summit, and he was presenting at the time. But PN, if you go like OG and you really dive into their old files, it was very kind of bodybuilder-esque, like white protein, green beans, not a lot of carbs, not super inclusive. Not that they weren't an inclusive company, but it was just like, this is the right way to have nutrition. And it was very black, white. And now PN has done such a good job of like embracing the spectrum of there's a lot of gray and meeting people where they're at. And I remember the first time he talked, and I have my old notes, which is so funny. I always wonder if I should show JB this. I was taking notes, and I was a dietitian in training, and I'm like, I don't want to coach like this. This is just for like black and white minded bodybuilders. Like, this is not the future of nutrition. And I remember thinking that as a student. Not that I'm some arrogant know-it-all at the time, but it was so cool to see the evolution of what he went through, Precision Nutrition went through, because at the time it was very much that traditional bodybuilder. Carbs are bad, don't have too much, we're going to macro count, down to the calorie, and this is how you're going to get the ideal body that you want. And, programs like Scrawny to Brawny and some of the stuff that they had back then.
I think that's how a lot of coaches.
I didn't write him off, but the first impression wasn't very good.
I think that's how a lot of coaches start, right? Like, it's almost like when you first are learning something, you need black and white in order to understand. But then you realize that things typically aren't black and white, and most everything lives in a gray area, and you need to be comfortable with that. And some things are right in certain situations, and other things are right in other situations. And so I think that's kind of the evolution of a coach as well, is that's just part of the learning process.
Absolutely.
So let's go back and let's talk before the PN days and kind of go into your journey. And so is nutrition like something you've always been interested in, or was it something that you kind of came on to kind of later in life?
No, I've always been interested because I was, a pretty athletic kid, played all the sports, but there were two really pivotal moments that I think landed me in this career. The first goes back to when I was a teenager. So healthy family, active kid, but my dad worked a really stressful job. He was an investment advisor. And there was this like actual phenomenon that happened right after 9/11 that all these stockbrokers were just starting to have heart attacks in like the 2-3 months because the market tanked, the world was in crisis. And my dad was part of that statistic. So he was playing hockey. It was Thanksgiving Day, and he collapsed on the ice and had a heart attack. And it was a bad one. It was called the Widowmaker. So basically the artery in his heart was like 85% blocked. That feeds most of the other coronary arteries. And I was just of the age as a teenager where I think I could drive a car independently. Like I had my G2 up here in Canada. I'm the oldest. I have a younger sister and a younger brother. My mom went to the hospital first. She's like, you stay home, babysit, your siblings. I'm just going to go there first. And then I got this panicked phone call an hour or two later being like, get your sister and brother in the car. Like, don't freak out, but like, we need you to come say goodbye to your father. Like, I was driving my family to the hospital to be like, Dad isn't going to make it. You need to get there right now. He is going to die. And I'll never forget that day. And like, I think I left a turkey in the oven. Maybe I had the sense to turn the oven off, like food on the stove, left all of Thanksgiving behind, got in the car, packed up my sister and brother, and like held my dad's hand. And I'm like, I love you. Like, I don't want you to go, but like, if you can't be here, we understand. And just, that was so awful. And from that point in my, kind of becoming an adult, but still sort of a child, like you're in that in-between stage, I was like, how do I help my family? Like, what can I do? What is my part in like trying to keep my dad? So he went through emergency surgery. It was really dicey. I think they kept him for like 3 weeks, which most heart operations, you're not an inpatient for 3 weeks long, but that's how like close he was to the edge. And so I was just like learning everything I possibly could about healthy eating, nutrition. What can I do in our home environment? Do I have to cut up vegetables? What kind of fruit should I have in the fridge? Like what can I do to help my dad, be okay? And then I think that oldest child kind of kicked in of like, okay, my sister and brother, my mom's at the hospital a lot. They need healthy options for packing lunches. Like, what can I do to make this easier on everyone? So that was kind of the first big life event that I knew nutrition was very much connected. And I was, of course, very motivated because I wanted to help my dad survive. And touch wood, he's still here today. He's doing great. He's improved a lot of his, stress and lifestyle habits. So we're super fortunate he did pull through. And then I went to university in very typical fashion of like, I like science. I'm a nerd. I want to help people. I think maybe something in medicine would make sense. And so I took a pre-med program being like, this keeps a lot of doors open. And then as I got into my classes, all of a sudden it was like the hyper competitive med student, cutthroat, like type A times infinity. And I was like, oh my gosh, these people are like crazy. And I was like, is that really the lifestyle I want? Being on call, being in school forever. So I took a nutrition elective and I fell into the textbook and couldn't get my nose out of the book. Like every chapter, I'm like, this is so interesting. This is so interesting. I was probably like a month ahead of my readings while I'm like struggling to try to do my organic chemistry homework. So I was like, I could care less about orgo, but I guess I have to take orgo to get this pre-med degree. Like I shudder thinking about orgo days. But nutrition, I was just like so excited. And so I had the sense to sit down and go to an academic advisor and booked a career counseling appointment. And I was like, this is so much fun. How do I take this textbook and make money, like do something with this for a living? And she's like, well, I've got great news. We need so many health coaches, nutrition coaches. There is so much opportunity in this area. Specifically, if you want to add the medical piece, which is kind of why you were in the pre-med, you can do this career called a registered dietitian, which is nutrition counseling, but also the ability to do medical nutrition therapy. Great news. There's more jobs than we can fill. Bad news. You are in the wrong university. We are not the accredited school. There's only 3 places in Ontario, and we are not one of them. This will not count. So I was like, okay, so what do I do? Because I loved where I went to school. I was a varsity athlete. I was in the middle of my season. I didn't want to like leave my teammates and friends, but very strategically, bless this academic counselor's heart, she contacted the 3 schools that had registered dietitian programs. And she's like, here's what we're going to do. I can tell you go and attack goals. We're going to get all your ducks in a row and line up as many credits as we can to give you credit with your degree with us. And then you can leapfrog into the dietetics program and basically get a running head start, and you'll be at 3rd year by the time you join the program. So that's what I did. I did a minor in life sciences or major in life sciences and minor in business because I always knew I wanted to be in private practice, and I thought the business skill set would be really helpful. Finished out my varsity season, transferred to the school that had the dietitian program. And then because I'd lined all my courses up so strategically, they gave me credit for 1st and 2nd year. And I did 3rd and 4th year in a year and a half. So I just like kind of killed myself, but overloaded credits, took summer school and graduated in that year and a half with yet a 2nd degree, and then did my internship and became a dietitian. So that textbook, that academic advisor, that course, and my dad having a heart attack were like the 2 things that especially molded me into, I guess, doing what I do today.
Right. And well, I mean, what you do today is a little bit unique than what we would say for like a typical RD. So, most RDs are in the
True.
medical system, they're working in a hospital, or they're working with people that are
Yep.
sick and looking to get better, right? And that's not necessarily
Right.
what you do on a regular basis. And so let's kind of talk a little bit about Nutrition RX, your company. And it started
Mm-hmm.
just as you. And so
Yep.
when was it like, I don't want to go the traditional route and work for the hospital. I want to do my own thing. Was there a moment that kind of made that shift for you?
Yeah, there's a really embarrassing moment. I
Do
was
share.
in the washroom in my internship, puking and crying, being like, I can't do this. So we have to do set rotations to get your RD title, and food service is one of the rotations. Now I had the worst of the worst preceptors for this unit that was very old school minded, and I guess like she got hazed, so she's like, well, we haze the news people, which I
Uh,
do not agree with when you have
right.
interns and students. But on top of that, there was a Norwalk outbreak on one of the floors, and we were following around the dietary aides to learn what they do, and they didn't tell us that this floor had a Norwalk outbreak, so we weren't properly masked with PPE to deliver food. And like myself, the other intern, the food service worker, there was about 6 of us that got Norwalk because for days we were delivering food to this Norwalk floor. The nurses knew, the doctors knew, no one communicated that to us. So I'm in the washroom, heaving up my guts, crying, being like, I don't want to be in the hospital. I was like, this sucks. Like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not healthcare. And in fact, at that point, it was so near the end of my internship. I'm like, you guys have only trained me in sick care.
Right.
Not one piece of this internship focused on true healthcare. And I was like, and thinking about my dad, I'm like, I don't want to be the dietitian when I do the cardiac rotation
Right.
that gives someone the same low sodium heart health handout for 5 minutes and says, you've had a heart attack. Here's some low sodium education. Wish you the best of luck on the other side. I
Right.
was like, this is so broken. This doesn't make sense to me. And so for me, there's a place for hospitals. There's absolutely a place for sick care. We need people to care for people in that acute, very ill place. But I was like, I don't want to complain. I want to be part of the solution. And being part of the solution means teaching people how to have those skills, how to have a
Mm-hmm.
happy and healthy relationship with food. Everyone knows what they need. It's not a knowledge problem. It's a system, environment, support problem. And so if I can at least be a tiny part of teaching people good lifelong habits, building supportive environments, the right mindsets, resiliency, problem solving, not using food to self-soothe and for comfort, maybe I can stop another kid on Thanksgiving not driving to the hospital to say goodbye to their dad. Like it worked out for my family, but it almost didn't. And so everyone tried to dissuade me that opening a private practice was a bad idea. They're like, who are you to know what you're doing? I didn't,
Mm-hmm.
like, honesty time. And they're like, you should work for someone else. You should go the safe route. With the hospital, you're going to get a pension. You're going to get paid sick days. That's the safe route.
Right.
Most dietitians aren't very entrepreneurial. Some are, but the majority of us aren't. And then the only thing we're taught in our internship is the sick care side of patient care, not really the proactive upstream approach. And at least in Canada, because the government will pay, yeah, they'll pay for you to get diabetes education when you've amputated your foot, when, you're going
Right.
blind or you have chronic kidney disease. But the people that are pre-diabetic get turned away. They don't get any government funded support. So opening private practice is a little bit riskier up here because people have to actually pay with their hard-earned money
Mm-hmm.
to see someone like me at Nutrition RX. But then dietitians are covered once you're at the point where you're totally hospitalized and things are really, really scary and bad. So I knew I had to be a part of the change, not part of the
Right.
status quo.
And I mean,
And that's how Nutrition RX came to be.
you were pretty strategic with starting it, right? Because you were starting Nutrition RX while you were doing your internship. Is that right?
I was like designing my logo, working with website designers. I would work on resources for clients and basically was like, I just need to come out of the gates with something to offer. And so I don't know if I mentioned this round one of when we tried to record the podcast,
Right.
but I did kind of an interesting thing that most people don't, dietitians do. And I overlapped intentionally. And when I mean I overlapped intentionally, I got selected to do a master's degree. Wasn't going to do it, but I got kind of handpicked by my favorite prof in undergrad. She's like, we won this awesome grant. We have the ability to do healthcare coaching in people with prediabetes who don't normally get any hospital care. And we want to test against the current standard, which is a 1-hour group presentation with lifestyle habit-based coaching. We're going to try out this thing called motivational interviewing. We're going to teach them skills, like we had cooking classes and group support, and we, had counseling sessions with a dietitian. But they're like, we need a registered dietitian to head up the thesis version and write a dissertation and, do the whole master's thing, but it needs to be an RD. It can't just be one of our regular nutrition students. Are you interested? And so I applied for like a scholarship, and I was like, okay, if I get this government scholarship, covers my $50,000 of tuition, cool. Not in debt to go do this.
Right.
Why not add a master's to my name? I don't need it, but nice to have. And so I won the scholarship and, was obviously given this amazing project to work on. And so what I would do is, as I was learning about motivational interviewing as a researcher, I was then in my private practice starting to test this style of coaching out. Because at first I came out with the we teach the food guide, or we do a very macro number, count calories, keep carbs and protein and fats in this target. But I was like, well, why not just see how it goes? I'm like, worst case, if my research is showing that this doesn't do anything, I can go back to the old meal plan macro approach.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened is my private practice, it was like someone put a rocket pack on my back and it shot me to the moon. I had more clients than I knew what to do with, more word of mouth referrals. The client results were so much better. They were happier. They were sticking around. The success almost became problematic because I had too many people to work with and just me, and I still had to be doing my master's research, that I buckled down and I was like, okay, here's where the overlap comes in. 1 week of master's, go do research, write your dissertation, write up your thesis, get ready for the defense. Then I would take a week and go back to private practice. And I'd be like, okay, this week is private practice, see as many clients as possible. It's okay you're not writing your thesis, help as many people in the real world as you can. And then I'd go back to the research week and be like, okay, get this research finished, get published, finish your articles, go get your dissertation ready. And I was like, crap, if I procrastinate on my master's, I have too many clients waiting for me that every week I don't see clients, I don't get paid. I better just finish this thesis on time. A great way to motivate yourself to not delay in a master's is have money and clients and opportunity waiting for you that you just have to finish this master's to get out. So I straddled these two approaches in the second year. And I also started teaching as a university prof. So I why not add 3 jobs to a situation, and came out with these incredible skills of feeling so confident that I figured out how to use motivational interviewing as a client tool to meet them where they're at, to still bring in the science of nutrition, but it really is more the art of behavior change coaching. Because I think that's what most nutrition coaches, fitness coaches really are, is we are transformational behavior change specialists, guides, support systems. It's not so much that this is the nutrition in broccoli and here's why broccoli is good for your body. And yeah, it was just so exciting that from there, Nutrition RX just grew and grew. And I brought on my first dietitian and then my next dietitian. And even this pandemic has been so interesting because we came in as a team of 3 and I'm coming out a team of 7 RDs in Nutrition RX now. And I just started to teach this style of coaching to other coaches. And then that led to a nutrition certification company where we do this now. So it's kind of cool and serendipitous how it all connected.
So did you have any experience with motivational interviewing before that master's thesis, or was it pretty much just your traditional RD education?
All.
Okay.
Totally traditional RD didactic.
Yep.
You're the expert. Here's the knowledge. Here's the plans. You teach the client the plan.
Right.
Even language, I cringe back now on non-compliant patients. Patients aren't non-compliant. They have competing priorities, competing values. it might be important for them to be social after 2 years of lockdowns, where they do want to go to the cottage and drink and have snacks. But also they see the importance of eating well. They're not non-compliant. They're human beings with competing priorities. So even when I think back to my training, when we talk about compliance levels, I throw all that out the window today. And it's just about, again, using that skill of helping people find their own why. They're ready, they're willing, they're able, and not ramming my expectations down someone's throat. It's meeting them where they're at.
And so what for the master's thesis, did you go out and find this, or was it serendipitous that you came across the motivational interviewing textbook, or were you studying psychology? How did you even come across it? Because in the nutrition world, even now, motivational interviewing isn't quite as mainstream as probably we'd like it to be.
Right.
And so this is many years ago, and so it would have been even less at that time.
Yeah. Right. So two things. One was a particular book. So you'll see I love my books behind me. And this one's pretty famous in the motivational interviewing world. I call it the Black Motivational Interviewing book. So this was one that I read back when I was starting to do some research for my thesis around, okay, if I'm trying this non-meal plan, testing an approach that doesn't match the gold standard, what the heck is this new thing? So this book really helped introduce the what-based questioning into my vocabulary. But the beautiful thing about research is you often get to talk to other researchers who are a little bit ahead of what the mainstream public knows. So if you think about a published paper and then things that make its way into newspapers and magazines and regular, by the time most things are in magazines and newspapers and on online blogs, that's probably research that started 5 to 7 years earlier, right? Because it starts, in an academic setting, then gets researched, then goes through rounds of publications and peer reviews, and then kind of makes its way out. So I happen to be super lucky that there are 2 researchers at my university at the time I was doing my thesis who were very early in studying and testing motivational interviewing. And they were using it for smoking cessation, they tested it in dentists to get people to floss more regularly, addiction support. They were just testing motivational interviewing in all these different domains. And so I had kind of heard of them. And they, at this time, were offering just these little one-day certification courses. So I went and signed myself up just to get certified in this one-day credit. I've now gone on and done their level 2 and level 3, but I'm so grateful, right place, right time, serendipitous. And it just, how lucky was I that these leaders in the world of motivational interviewing research were conducting research in the same academic facility I was doing my nutrition research in.
So you
kind of stumbled on it a little bit early.
Right. I mean, it's awesome. And it's crazy how some of these things come together, right? Because that moment has really dictated the entire path after that, right? Let's say that doesn't happen, you're maybe in a completely different spot. And so it's just crazy how life works that way, right? So you finished up your master's, and so what was the conclusion? I mean, did you come up with hard data that said this is so much better than this?
Yeah, it blew it out of the water. We tried to be really medically objective. So we looked at things like random blood glucose improved, A1C, the 3-month average of someone's blood sugar levels greatly improved. Blood pressure went down, inches lost was down, weight was down. We had body composition scans, so the amount of muscularity to body fat, was better. But it was the adherence, essentially the most, or maybe in Coach Catalyst, I think about this with clients, it's the consistency. We looked at the consistency that they came to the cooking classes, the consistency that they had vegetables with meals, the consistency that they walked as a stress management strategy. So what we really gave them were skills, routines, and systems. We didn't actually set goals in a way. We gave them routines, habits, and systems that were practice and practice and practice. And once they found that consistency at the level that they were ready, willing, able to do, the stickiness of those most important factors stuck. So we looked at their protein intake, their vegetable intake, their fiber intake, their water intake. There's nutritional scores you can look at. In every facet, they blew the standard meal plan, 1 hour educational talk on prediabetes out of the water. But if we look at it from as health coaches, why was that? Because education doesn't change behavior, because they had a coach through 8 months of support, because the coach broke it down into skills, habits, routines, and systems. So essentially we tested a coach supported system-based style of behavior change versus a didactic educational system of behavior change. And of course, the coaching supported model blew the education model out of the water. I mean, I think that's common to anyone who's a coach.
And so
common knowledge.
Right. It's common knowledge, right? You just know, if I do it with a coach, I'm going to get to where I want to get to much faster and probably be a lot more. But it's funny how we think that that's different with nutrition than it is with learning how to play basketball, right? So did that change? Did that change anything? Did that as far as the medical establishment? Did you see? You know what I mean? Here's clear data on why a certain way is better.
A little, and then it regressed. So as government changes who's in power, and depending on which political power, it got cut. So for a while, that program lived on after my master's ended. They were like, clearly this should now be the gold standard. We need coaches. We need to have cooking classes. And we had organized hikes and walk groups and, weekly and monthly meetups. And that stuck around until it became a line item on some person's budget chopping block, and it got cut. And in fact, with the pandemic as a convenient excuse of in-person stuff, we can't be together because heaven forbid, teaching you to manage your diabetes is more dangerous than you catching COVID or whatever. They even stopped even the educational programs.
Mm-hmm.
So first they got rid of all the coaching support and they went back to the not so good previous gold standard. And then they even cut that in the pandemic. And now we have all these new pre-diabetic and type 2 diabetics getting no support, no coaching. So in my private practice, I've expanded my team because this is exactly what we do. So on a small scale, I've been able to absorb a lot of these, government funded programs, but it's really sad to see because there's so much research to show spending in prevention or catching it when it's a small health concern saves so much money down the road. But I think sometimes people are very short-sighted when they're like, I have to cut something from my budget, cut this today, not appreciating that, that $20,000 amputation you're paying for as well, maybe could have been prevented had you kept the other line item, in our healthcare system.
Right.
But we start to get into the political system of healthcare.
Right. And it's not just Canada, it's the US. I think it's all over the world. Right. It's hard to quantify prevention because it's kind of if it doesn't happen, it's it's kind of the way it was supposed to go. And so, all right, so let's kind of switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about the business aspect, because you were building your own business, which was, you didn't name it after yourself, but it was people coming to you right away. They knew who Jen was. They wanted to work with Jen. And so we see this a lot in the fitness industry as maybe a personal trainer, and then it gets to a point where you just can't take on any more clients. So how did you, I think, transitioning to that first coach, what was that like in bringing on that first coach? Were you just I'm full of clients and I need someone else to be able to bring these people to, or was there a different way that it happened?
No, kind of like you described. I think many coaches that reach the point of burnout recognize they need to follow their own advice. You can see it in someone else who is drowning and struggling to be you need to increase your capacity by asking for help, by not trying to be a superhero and thinking you can do everything yourself and, add one more person. And so one of the things that really helped me find the moment I needed to hire is I decided I would make a non-negotiable weekly schedule. And what my non-negotiable weekly schedule was, all the most important big rocks had to fit. Where were my workouts going to go? Where were, the end of day going to actually be the real end of day? Not you're done with clients. Now there's all these hours of admin stuff you have to do. Could weekends be weekends? Could I, still find time to do my own food prep and grocery shop? And I realized after a certain number of clients, the big rocks wouldn't fit. And I was like, I am planning my week wrong. So here are the things that are most important. These are non-negotiables. Now with my non-negotiables locked in, what can I reasonably do? And so then I had really strict boundaries that if my number of clients in a day was full or my number of clients per week was full, it was like, well, you'll have to book next week. You'll have to. And then it became like, holy crap, I'm booking 5 or 6 or 8 weeks out. This isn't even making sense anymore. And so at that point, I could either work more and start squeezing people back in, but I promised myself I wouldn't do that. Or it's such a clear answer at that point when you've decided on safe, healthy limits. And I would argue for any coach that's close to burnout is make your limit closer to like 80% of what you think you can handle in a week, because the other 20% is still going to fill up with stuff. If you plan your week at 100% and life still pours more on top of that 100%, then you're totally in a recipe for burnout. So I set my week for what was reasonable to do in about 80%, assuming the 80% is 100% full. I leave a 20% for overflow because let's just face it, that's how life goes. And at that point I was like, oh yeah, I'm constantly hitting always my 80%. I need support. And so I put out some feelers, put out a job posting, and, was trying to interview, not for someone identically like me. And in fact, I like to hire new grads. I hire for attitude because I know I can train the motivational interviewing and the counseling skills. But the personality, the ability to connect, the willingness to meet, your client where they're at, I ask more questions. And I also really interview for growth mindset. It's super important to me that they love to read books. They're doing continuing education. They're very open to not being stuck or dogmatic in one way of thinking. I want someone that is curious and flexible and inquisitive and wants to always keep learning. And then I can raise their skill level, but I can't change their personality if their personality isn't very good. So that's what I hire for, is a great personality and a growth mindset.
I think that's a great system. And I think it works across pretty much any domain. We see the same thing with coaches is you could teach someone how to squat. You can teach someone how to teach the squat or the bench press or whatever, but to teach someone to be likable is a lot harder. And if you can start with that, and then you can build the skills. So I just want to commend you on like being that diligent with your schedule, especially being like and correct me if I'm wrong, but like a type A personality that likes to get stuff done, right? Like most people are like, all right, they go to a seminar or they read a book and like this strategy is awesome and they set it up and it works for a week. But then it's like, maybe if I just like, instead of working out 60 minutes, I'll work out 45 minutes and then I can do something with that 15. And then it's like, okay, then after the kids go to bed, I can get another hour here. And then if I get up an hour earlier, I can get an hour here. And it just kind of bleeds and bleeds and bleeds until you're just back to just working all the time. And so did you have any hiccups, or were you like, this is the way and I'm sticking to it no matter what?
No, hiccups for sure. Everything is like, oh man, life will keep teaching you a lesson and smoking you in the face with a lesson until you are willing to learn the lesson. So if you find yourself getting your butt whooped over and over and over, maybe it's time to like listen to the lesson and like make some changes. Just throwing that out there. So I finished my master's when I was becoming a new professor and like creating university classes from scratch, writing the master's, which is like should be a full-time student endeavor. I didn't do a part-time master's. I did a full-time. Oh yeah. And starting a company that was like growing so rapidly. I was exhausted. Like first stage of burnout I've ever been, super burnt out in my life, to the point where like I was sleeping through my 4 alarms, and I'm very diligent. I get up in the morning, I work out, but like it would be 10:30 and I was like, I just slept through my first 2 clients of private practice. Like that's so unprofessional. Like that was like the wake up call of like, I'm not okay. Like this is not okay if this is happening. And so I actually did a year of no. And what I mean by that is the year after my master's, I had to make a change because I was saying opportunities. Yes, yes, yes. Of course you say yes. You're so new in your career. Yeah. But I thought about a slingshot. I can't go forward unless I pull my slingshot backwards for a little bit. I need to reload the potential energy inside myself because I was just trying to like fling a slingshot and it wasn't giving enough time to go backwards. So I said, this year of no is my chance to catch my breath, regroup, get my sleep back in order, get my wellness back in order. And I know I'm going to shoot out of that cannon after a year of no. So I didn't do a lot of public speaking. I didn't necessarily develop a lot of new resources. I just didn't see a lot of front. Like I just had to rest because I don't think we're meant to be even all the time. I do think there's times that you hustle and you rest, and there's peaks and valleys. I'm not promoting like toxic hustle culture, but also there's times that like you do need to just demand more of yourself. I really wanted to hit my graduation deadline and not extend another semester. And like I had to put the pedal to the metal to get that done. And then the rest is the other side of the coin. And it's not that I failed or was bad. It's just what I needed. So in terms of then, when you say no to everything, your schedule starts to get a lot lighter. And it's like, well, it's like taking a whiteboard and erasing it back down to zero and being like, what things go back on my calendar? And this is maybe going to sound silly, and this is just what worked for me. I found I did it in university, and then I also started to do it as a working adult. You know, in university, when you get your class schedule and maybe you get some flexibility of like choosing where you want your classes to go. So I would pick classes based on when it made sense to go to campus. But because I was a varsity athlete and I knew when I always had to be at practice, in my calendar, I would put where my varsity workouts were, where my classes were. I also worked a part-time job in university. So I put my part-time job into my calendar. I'd also put homework blocks of like, excuse me. I would put homework blocks into my calendar of like, well, on Monday, this would be the best time to do homework based on today's day. Tuesday would be that. Friday, I used to put like a big afternoon chill block that was like, I needed guilt-free permission that like, you can watch some Netflix, you can take a break. But if I don't schedule it, I feel guilty. And then I tried to keep the weekends much lighter because those were our travel, competition stuff. And so I found when I became a working adult, at first I lost that schedule and I was like, wait, that made me super successful. Success leaves clues. Why wouldn't I just use a system I used to use before? So then as an adult, I'd be like, okay, where do I go to the gym? That's non-negotiable. Where do I get groceries? I used to plan that as a university student. Can you guys see my type A-ness coming out? Where do I go to my job? And then also like, where's the downtime? And so and I used to actually like have my schedule legit on my office wall. So when clients are like, oh, when can I work with you? I'll be like, oh yeah, here's my blocks. But they would also see my workout spots because someone would be like, well, why can't I meet with you at 8? I start work at 9. I'm like, well, I work out 7 to 8. That's why I can't meet with you at 8. I'm sorry. I'm not giving that up. And then they're like, I'm kind of inspired. Maybe I should protect my schedule like that. I'm like, yeah, maybe you should. And you might feel a lot better. So it's a weird system, but I've done that. And now it's obviously gone digital with like Google Calendar, but all those blocks are still protected.
That's awesome. And I think, so I went through a very similar phase in college because I was also a collegiate athlete and I also cared a lot about school. And so when you are a collegiate athlete, like you just lose 4 hours out of every day. And so it's like, all right, we've got practice, we've got lifting, we've got conditioning. And like, if I don't show up, I'm not on the team and I want to be on the team. So I'm going to show up. And then you get this like, all right, so now I still have to go to class as well. So those are gone. And I still have to eat lunch and dinner and all. And so those are gone. And so then it's like, all right, I have 3 hours today to do homework and I want to perform well in my classes. And so like, instead of playing video games, I do homework. And I think it forces you to, because you don't have as much time as everyone else, to be really diligent with your time. And I don't know whose law it is, but like basically the task will fill the time you have in order to do it.
Pareto's law? The 80-20?
That's
however much time you allow, it fills into however much time you give it.
Expands, right? So if I have an hour to do this task, it will take an hour. But if I have a half an hour to do this task, I'll find a way to get it done in a half an hour. And so artificially, your world is just, I want to sleep 8 hours. Okay, cool. Now I'm at, 16. I've got 4 hours of practice. Now I'm at 12. I eat for a couple hours. Now I'm at 10. I go to class for 4 hours. Now I'm at like, and so like, it's like, okay, this is the time I have. And then you just get it done. And so I'm probably not as diligent as you. And I think like you just inspired me to be more diligent. I have small children, and so sometimes like you have this great plan, and then someone is throwing up all night, and now like
Yeah.
that plan has to change, and so you need a little bit
Yeah.
more flexibility. But I think
Can
just
I give you an idea if you're
I
open
love
to it?
ideas. Yes, I am open to
Okay.
it.
So this is my newest reiteration for anyone in the world that feels like probably we all do, which is like there's always too much to do and there's not enough time.
Hmm.
I now plan 1 week off every single month and I call it a growth week. And what a growth week is like no working in the business in terms of like seeing the clients, being the dietitian, just the day to day hustle and bustle of what you do.
Hmm.
Because I was starting to recognize as I got busier, you need that CEO time, you need that thinking time, or you need that like uninterrupted deep work project time. And the book Deep Work by Cal Newport
Yep.
was really helpful for this idea. The other idea maybe was like Bill Gates and his Think Weeks, where he'd go up to a cabin and bring a bunch of stuff to read. And I was like, if these great people are advocating for just a week of uninterrupted time, let's just see what happens. Like I'm taking a financial hit because now I don't have all those income paying client appointments, but
Right.
maybe protecting this growth thinking week is actually going to pay itself out in even greater income because I can see the big picture or those important but not urgent tasks, because we all have important but not urgent. They rest heavy on our souls because we know they would help our business. They know they would help our health, but we don't do them. So I started off with just doing one every second month. And I was like, this is so great. I think I'm going to do this monthly. And so I've pre booked the next 3 years of my life where it's the middle week of every single month. It is blocked off as growth week. So any booking links I send out to clients,
Right.
to meetings, to podcasters, like
Yeah.
looks like I'm fully booked up because I am. It's a date with me. But then as tasks pile up in my mind, instead of that, like, oh, do I stay up till 10 after the kids go to bed and
Right.
squeeze it
Yeah.
out? It's like, nope. And I don't overschedule my growth week, but it's like the goal of by the end of growth week is I normally have 1 to 2 things that I try to move forward in that growth week. And there are things that make my business better, that Kaizen idea of constant growth. And if
Yep.
I take action on this, my company, my business is going to be better. And also, it's also just like catch up for fun. So, like, I had a
Hmm.
growth week last winter and I worked deep work in the morning from like 8 till 1. And then from 1 o'clock onwards, I just did fun stuff. I went downhill skiing, cross country skiing, watched some shows on TV, went to my friend's sauna, hung out in her sauna. And I just come out of these growth weeks like rejuvenated. And then the lily pad is like, I just have to get through 4 more weeks of work and another lily pad of respite is coming my way. And do you know how amazing it is to know that you have a whole week just to yourself to
Right.
do all the things that nag on your mind that aren't done? It's like the best Christmas. It's awesome. It's so amazing. This is adulting at its finest in my world.
I love it. And so for those growth weeks,
Yeah.
just kind of looking at the logistics of it. So do you go to a separate place? Do you still work from your office? Like what's the environment like?
I just go wherever I feel inspired. So sometimes I work from my home office. Sometimes I work from my office. If I do a little spin around, hopefully this isn't like Blair Witch Project, but way down, I've got like red
Yep.
Muskoka chairs that face a river. So sometimes I
Yep.
just take my laptop and I go sit in the backyard of our office and go sit by the water. I've done growth weeks in a forest where I hike out, to local
Right.
forests and I will go bring a laptop and a backpack and a little camp chair and I'll just go sit by the water for a couple hours, like literally an hour and a half
Hmm.
into a forest where no one can like bother me.
Right.
I have a friend who has this like backcountry farm that she's lent me and I've gone up there. Or I'll travel, I'll go somewhere international and like vacation, but do growth week thinking and activities while I'm there. And it is meant to be half, like there's no percentage, but it's
Right.
meant to be a fusing of personal rejuvenation and CEO big picture thinking and doing. That's what they're meant to be for me.
So do you build in kind of quote unquote vacation into those growth weeks, or do you
I
also take
do.
like true
And I also still
vacation?
book separate
Okay.
vacations. Yeah.
Yeah.
I struggle to turn off. So this was kind
No,
of my
really?
solution of like, since I can't really turn it off, might as well have fun on a growth week too.
Right. Okay. And so do you spend the first day of a
Yeah.
growth week trying to plan your growth week? Because I mean, as any entrepreneur, any type A, it's like, I got 15 projects that I think I can do.
Yeah. I do less than you think you should.
Okay.
I truly only expect one thing to move forward at the week. I get more than one thing done, but I call the growth week a success if one thing that I know has moved my company forward was taken care of that week. And I think of it like a football player or quarterback. I'm the quarterback. I would rather take a ball and get it all the way to a touchdown than have 20 balls that moved a foot forward, but
Right.
none of them got the touchdown. So I think psychologically, I can look at it as I have 20 projects I'm trying to do all at once, or 20 balls in a queue. That one just got touchdown, pick up the next ball, take it to the touchdown. So I just start one thing at a time.
Okay.
And it's like, what's the most important touchdown? If I get this touchdown this week, amazing. And if I get it done, do I want to grab another ball or do I want to have a little bit more fun? And both are perfectly okay options.
And so do you have like a document or like a notes or something where you're just keeping track of all these balls where you're like, idea, go there, and then you kind of look at that to help organize it? I feel like you're going to show me something.
I do. You're going to kind of laugh. So I am.
I love it.
This, again, it used to be more high tech. How embarrassing if it is not. Oh, goodness. Please don't tell me I left it up. My other location, because I had it out last night working on it. Oh, no, here it is. In university, I'd walk around with a piece of paper folded up in four. When I have an idea goes down on the piece of paper. When the idea is done, the idea gets highlighted. When the paper is nearly full, I start with a fresh piece of paper. I transfer over the things that are unhighlighted, and I start a new piece of paper. This is my version of the growth week of like all the things you have to do. And it just stays folded in my bag that goes everywhere with me.
Okay.
And then you don't have to keep stuff in your head. And then when I think about the growth week, I just look at that and go, of that, what is the most important? So like, for instance, I can tell you what's coming up on my next growth week. If I look at my list, I have to get continuing education credits done with a bunch of certifying organizations for my Prosper Nutrition Coaching cert.
Yep.
So I need to research all the different bodies that give CEUs. And in 1 week, I'm going to hammer out as many CEU approvals as I can. But that's been just sitting on here for a couple weeks now. And when my August growth week comes up, when I look at this, that's probably the most important football to go get a touchdown on first. But that's
awesome.
Literally
I know.
CEUs, go get it done.
That is awesome.
Yep.
And so I guess
doesn't need to be super complicated.
Right. So I guess really it's the only criteria is like something that's with you all the time. So if someone wanted to model this, right, maybe they have their cell phone with them and they have the notes app and they just have a single note that they put any idea on, and other people may like pieces of paper or a notebook. But that's awesome. Random question. Have you ever lost it?
Yeah, and I have, like, rarely, because I always have it in the same pouch of my backpack. But ultimately, you kind of know what's running through your head, right? It's just the brain dump of like all these swirling things we all have to do.
Right.
But it also is like personal too. Like I have to get like my duvet. I don't like that it has buttons, so I need to take it to the seamstress to sew a zipper instead of buttons. And that's there beside get continuing education credits for my company.
Cool.
But one's a growth week activity. One is like a get it done in life activity.
Right. Which could also probably happen during growth week too. Sometimes it's nice to just check all of the personal things off that are just like kind of put on the back burner until. So that's awesome. So, I mean, really what this is, it's kind of like interval training where you're going to go hard for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But you can go hard understanding that I'm going to have a week off to be able to focus on some other things. And so just like we would sprint on an Airdyne, knowing I only got to go 10 seconds because I know I'm going to get a break after this. And so I can go a little bit harder during those 10 seconds because it's not like the coach just says, all right, get on the air bike and sprint and you're going to go as long as you can. And no one ever knows how long they're going to go. So it's super cool.
I love that you use that analogy too, because I'll give one more thing about this growth week, because it's so much more than just like running a business and being a CEO. It really integrates like personal wellness with business wellness. Mm-hmm. So on those growth weeks, I don't have to set an alarm. If I've been a little bit sleep deprived, I just wake up when I wake up and I'm ready to start my day on no timeline. I normally like to train in the morning, but if I want to go to the 10:30 morning CrossFit class or the noon class and see people I don't normally get to see, cool. If I want to just do a yoga retreat for a day or go for a long hike and think in the woods for 3 hours, amazing. So it's this integration of like business wellness, but personal wellness, and that pacing of like, I'm going to get a chance to catch my breath. I'm going to get a chance to just run the errand if I need to run the errand and not feel guilty about where do I squeeze that in. And I think we're so hard on ourselves as business owners about work-life
Right.
balance, or like work has to stop here and personal life starts there. But it very much, for me, bleeds into one another. So why not just create? I just had to be honest with myself that I work too much and like really have a hard time shutting down. So I need to do these forced shutdowns, like when you take your car off
Right.
the road for maintenance. This is me taking myself off the road of the day-to-day dietitian work to do maintenance, business maintenance,
Right.
mental health maintenance, physical health maintenance. And then my car works for me a whole lot better before it crashes and
Right.
burns.
This is super interesting. Have you
But I have to schedule it because it doesn't just accidentally happen.
Right. I mean, that's the key, right? Is it's blocked off. The calendar is blocked off. No one can come in there and grab a spot on your calendar. The interesting thing, and probably the hardest thing for a lot of coaches or people that work with people, so we get paid when we work with people, is taking that week off, right? And maybe the fear and the other emotions that come from, well, are my clients going to leave because they don't work with me that week, or I'm not going to have the income from that week. So if someone was kind of in those shoes, the coaching type shoe where they get paid by other people, how would you advise someone like that if maybe they're dealing with a lot of stuff that you dealt with?
Yeah, think abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset. If I stay in a scarcity mindset, I trade time for dollars. I need to be in front of a client coaching or be a personal trainer on the floor, and that's how I make my living. If I think abundance mindset, how do I add value to this world, especially value that scales? I need to have breaks where I pull myself out of the day-to-day business to add that value. So when I created this nutrition certification program, I had to find time to film myself, to create the units, to create the modules. I wouldn't have been my best presenter if I tried to squeeze it in at 10 o'clock at night, exhausted after a whole day of seeing clients. So when I do these growth weeks, I think about, how do I add value to my clients, to my team? Maybe I work on a new resource that I know my team has been asking for. I make a vegan-friendly version of our new client handbook that's all vegan-friendly recipes, because I've gotten the feedback that more people are vegan and our healthy recipe book isn't working for them. But that adds long-term value. So I think for coaches that are scared, see the big picture. Now, don't play video games on your growth week and dink around. Yes, rejuvenate and recover, but try to find activities that you can either sell at scale or raises the quality of your product, differentiates your service, time to invest in training your team, getting better, a clinician yourself. All of those are investments. And just because I put money in the stock market today, I don't necessarily expect that stock to fully pay me that ROI the first day I invested. But if I keep investing, the investment grows. And that's what I've seen from these growth weeks, is you would think you'd make less money, and I've actually made much more because I'm being visionary and making my company and myself better.
And you do them monthly now, correct?
I do them every single month.
And you said you've basically blocked off the next 3 years. You just,
I think I'm booked off till like 2025.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah. Because people get, if you don't own your schedule, people own you. You have to own your schedule.
So, I mean, was Prosper, we can talk a little bit about Prosper and what that is. And so did that come out of a growth week? I mean, was that kind of the product of?
It came out of many growth
It
weeks.
wasn't
because that couldn't happen all at once. Yeah. So what he's basically referring to with Prosper is, not only do I own Nutrition RX, which is that very typical brick and mortar online nutrition coaching company for, we're a team of 7 dietitians, but I was approached to create basically our system of, like, if people could lift the hood, or if they were coming to join our practice, they're like, how would you train them? You know so much about motivational interviewing. Many coaches are certified, but they're not getting the same results you're getting as a nutrition coach. Like, what are you doing to make that happen? And that's what the question someone posed me with. And they're like, do you think you could just teach your system and share your resources and kind of like actually let people come into what you've been doing and systematize it as a training methodology or like an actual accredited certification? So that's what we did, is we worked with insurance agents. We vetted it so that it's accredited, you're insurable, you get that certified nutrition coach title. But building on the work I did with PN, the biggest limitation of PN scale is they like mail you a textbook and then it's like read the textbook on your own time, write the
Right.
exams, and then you're certified. Where we know if I had a new dietitian come in, I wouldn't just go, here's our company handbook, read it, learn the system from a book, and then start seeing clients. It's very mentor based. It's very hands-on. So here's some stuff I want you to know. Here's some things about the way that we do it, but we want you to sit in, come shadow. We're going to do private one-on-one conversations to answer your questions and help you feel comfortable. So that's what we did is we built a 20-unit video module of like me training how to be a great nutrition coach, the science of nutrition, and then the counseling, motivational interviewing, art of behavior change part. But then you also get to go on real mentoring calls that are private, not a group call, just for you or your team of coaches at your organization. So we can talk through the concerns and the building blocks of your actual program, whether it's new, sort of established or well established, but wanting to do a revamp and get better. We also brought in a business coach and mentor who can help with the pricing, the packaging, the offers, the marketing. So again, most nutrition coaches don't get marketing specific to nutrition coaching. And we connected with industry partners like you guys and just companies that we vetted and trust where we're like, these tools are what we use. We want to open our doors and actually show you so you don't have to take months or years finding trustworthy companies that will support the work that you're doing. So that's how Coach Catalyst got brought into Prosper, because we're like, you're our favorite habit-based coaching platform. And then to send you out accredited, they actually get to shadow. So they get to come in virtually and watch me do real client counseling sessions. They get to go watch Lindsay do real client counseling sessions. And I don't think I've heard of any other accredited nutrition program where you get to go watch from, experts doing this and sitting like a fly on the wall and observing the language, observing the body language, observing how they run a client session. And it also shows you like what we do before an appointment, what we do after an appointment, how do we set up, what emails might we send, our playbook, our handouts, our scripts. Like you literally get everything that we've built. So, and then it's white label, unbranded. So you get to slap your own label on your own name and like make it your own, which saves you hours of work. So that came out of many
that's not just a 5-day process. I'm just curious on it. So many times we get ideas or we get approached with something, but we don't actually act on it for like multiple years. Like even Coach Catalyst is a great example. Kane and I talked about Coach Catalyst probably 2 years before we ever decided to start going in that direction. And so when you were thinking about Prosper, was it like someone gave you the idea or, hey, we want to partner and do this? And you were like, yes, we'll go. I'll schedule for our next growth week. Or was it like a couple years or a couple months of like deliberation?
It was a little more immediate. So I tend to be a bit of an action taker, but again, these very serendipitous, the universe kind of put a cool job opportunity in front of me, right place, right time. So in the CrossFit world, my husband owned a CrossFit facility from 2006 till late 2021 or late 2022. What year are we in? We're in 2022, late 2021. So 16 years essentially. And we've always had a super high 6-figure, really functional nutrition program in our CrossFit gym. So other CrossFit owners kind of knew or paid attention. In fact, other CrossFit gyms in our city would like send their members to our nutrition program, even though they lived in another part of the city, and CrossFitted there. But we were very collaborative, not competitive. Like, we just want the best for people. And so this business mentoring company called Two Brain Business had kind of gotten word of like things were going well. And obviously in the pandemic, especially Canada with our lockdowns, gyms were really challenged because they weren't allowed to do in-person workouts. And so what's really great about Two Brain Business is they're very data and dashboard oriented. So when they started to look at their gyms that were weathering the pandemic a little bit better, most of those gyms had a nutrition component. And so they were like, well, we know you have a gym with a nutrition component that's doing very well. Would you be willing to teach us your system? We would love to pay for that. We would love to do a revenue share of like, you build the system, we'll share it to our audience. And I was like, well, I'm on lockdown anyways. I guess there's nothing else to really do. And so I rushed out, bought a camera, hopped hopped immediately into a growth week, added some weekends where I put, again, that hustle versus then catch your breath, and knocked out a course in about a month. And then because I had spent a decade previously building all the resources, that part was really easy because it wasn't like I was building stuff for them from scratch. I also had 8 years of being a university prof. So I already kind of had that skill set of how to set a curriculum, how much material was just the right amount per lecture or per unit. And so my husband, bless his heart, built me a filming studio in a weekend, like drywalled his little like tool shed man cave, soundproofed it. We set up cameras, we set up a table, and I basically just hopped in and was like, okay, let's go here, boom. And yeah, it took me maybe 3 weeks to build the units, and then maybe another 3 weeks to, or actually I filmed it in 3 days. It was a long 3 days. I think I put 3 12-hour days of filming in, but then sent it off to video editors. And it was at that time the Two Brain Coaching, nutrition coaching course. And then when my contract with them was up and that company ended up kind of dissolving, like they are no more. I ultimately just, because it was my intellectual property, took it back. And then I decided to refilm it, was ready to like make it just that little bit better.
Right.
I added in a unit on imposter syndrome because so many coaches struggle with imposter syndrome. So I thought that was a really important piece. And then version 2 got released this May, and that is the Prosper Nutrition certification.
As a gym owner, Coach Catalyst is the key to having low turnover. For several years, I struggled and spent 10 to 20 hours a week communicating with clients via phone calls, Facebook Messenger, email, and text messages. I had tried everything to make my life more efficient. I was at my wit's end. And then I found Coach Catalyst. Since starting the software, I have found a life again, and my clients are thanking me for being so involved in their fitness life. I've cut my daily commitment to interacting with over 300 clients to under 15 minutes a day and have streamlined my 6-week challenges. I couldn't recommend it more. I just don't know if I would even be here today if it wasn't for Coach Catalyst. If you don't have an account already, you're missing out and not helping the people you could be.
That's awesome. I think sometimes people see the end product and they forget, like, Prosper Nutrition probably wasn't possible if you didn't put in these 8 to 10 years of other work that then allowed this cool thing to come to fruition. And so I think sometimes we forget sometimes how long, like being patient, that it takes a while in order to build something really cool. And sometimes we need to develop other skills first until we're ready to really to do that thing. And so I think it's super cool to hear some of that backstory on, the things that probably needed to happen first in order for this really cool thing that helps a ton of coaches, and ultimately helps a lot of people, because you're empowering coaches to then go out in the masses and help people get better. So that's awesome. All right. So right now you're doing all this stuff, like you're doing it all. How do you keep, we've talked a little bit about your scheduling, but you're still practicing, right? And you're still working with clients. You are heavily involved in Prosper Nutrition. And so you're helping coaches there. You're still writing, you're still podcast, like you're doing all of these things. Do you kind of like this week is more client week, this week's more Prosper week? How do you manage the different businesses that you're involved with?
Yeah, I break it down by parts of the day. So as opposed to now flipping week to week, because I don't want someone who reaches out on the Prosper side feels like they have to wait a week to hear back. Is Nutrition RX and client care is usually like the first block in the morning. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday mornings are always for my nutrition clients. I use Mondays often as my emergency day. And when I say emergency, I have some very high risk, high need clients, like really sick eating disorders, cancer patients, where things can change really quickly. So again, one of the things I always did when I was a university prof is if it comes up once, whatever, it's a one-off. If the problem comes up 2 or more times, it's a systems problem. So I'd always looked at my exams when more than one student would ask the same question. I wrote the question poorly. If 2 students or more asked me about it, and then I would change the question for future exams. So that's how I run my business, is every time there's a problem and it happens more than once, it's a systems problem. So I was realizing I had these like urgent, unwell eating disorder clients who needed to be seen, but I couldn't fit them in. So I just started to leave Monday mornings open when people had rough weekends and they needed that emergency spot. So now I actually see clients 4 days of the week, but my real real schedule of like 3 days of the week, but I know I've set that emergency time aside. Afternoons are all for Prosper and admin for Nutrition RX. So that's when I mentor the nutrition coaches who are going through the certification. This is when I have time to schedule podcasts and public speaking. It lets me just do bookkeeping, client emails, management. Fridays are kind of like a mini growth week. I try to keep Fridays really light and very CEO, visionary, big picture, projects moving forward, loose ends from the week that I won't feel good going into the weekend with them sort of untied. And so the hardest part, I think, back in the day was accepting the limits of how many clients I could see. Because I was like, of course, I could see more than 3 people in a day. Of course I could, but not if I wanted to be a CEO for 2 companies and a great leader and manager and take care of the non-negotiables that matter to me. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, that's I kind of mornings Nutrition RX, afternoons Prosper.
I think that's a really good, because I mean, a lot of people listening to this, and you see this with a lot of coaches, they kind of have their hands in a few different things. And just the nature of being an entrepreneur, sometimes you like to do a few different things, like just doing the same thing every day is like prison for an entrepreneur. And so I like that setup. And I like the idea of kind of the front end and the back end of your weeks being flexible, because then if things do come up, there is a little bit of that give and take. In the middle of the week is pretty structured. That's awesome. Is this a process that just kind of evolved over time, where you just kind of like, all right, this now works for me, and then, or was it something that was like conscious? This is how I'm going to do it.
No, it started consciously, kind of going back to that nerdy university schedule of like, this is where my class times are. This is where my varsity practice times are. This is when I eat food. This is when I get groceries. And then I tried to just sort of like free flow it for a while. And then I buried myself and I was like, well, this doesn't feel good. This isn't fun. So then I did my year of no, where I wiped everything clean. And then I conscientiously started to build it back. But, even it evolves. It's a living, breathing kind of organism. Like when I used to teach as a university prof, well, the teaching kind of forced the dual days where I would teach in the morning and see private practice clients at night, or I'd, teach a night class. And so I'd see private practice in the morning. So I've always loved, not that it's about split shifting, although many, health coaches do split shift. It was more about like, I like the attention to something for half a day, take a lunch break, clear your mind, switch gears, be focused and not multitasking, and now put the focus on the other important thing. And then you kind of feel refreshed at the start of each half of the day, because it's not like 2:00 and you're like, oh, I've been at this all day. It's like, oh, I can like CrossFit pacing. I can get through a round. I can get through 3 clients in a morning. Oh, I can get through 3 hours of admin and focused deep work in the afternoon. So I like it. It just like a CrossFit workout. It's not just deadlifts. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, but with a repeatable pattern of how the structure supports you. You basically have to not hurt you from you. Like I would hurt myself. I have to put crash pads in because I pile drive myself into the wall. So know thyself and then build the protection you need from yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I
don't know if any other entrepreneur can relate.
No, absolutely. And I think there's this blend, right? And I'm just kind of thinking about this as you're telling me, because I mean, this is really the first time that we have talked deeply about this. And in my own mind, I'm like, well, it's really interesting because you're handling the day-to-day operations, which in any business or coaching practice, anything, there's day-to-day operations, right? So you're handling those, but many times the day-to-day operations takes precedence over the big thinking. And so, but you kind of need both. If you stay in the day-to-day, it's hard to get that growth. But if you're just big thinking all the time, then you're not necessarily taking care of the day-to-day. And so with the growth week, that kind of allows you to let go of day-to-day and then go into big thinking and kind of think about that next project or what's next, and then come back into the day-to-day, but like a nice rhythm. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. Is it's a nice rhythm back and forth, and which allows you to do both and not feel like I don't want to do this anymore because I'm so tired, right?
That's the biggest thing. Is I think any listener, any coach, any healthcare provider, any entrepreneur, we're so good at what we do. We love to help. Our hearts are all in the right place. I have so many great things to say about the people that enter this profession. Generally most people aren't doing it because they're chasing $1 million. They're doing it because they want to have an impact. But that impactful work really can take a lot from you. And the sad thing is there's coaches who leave, good coaches, great coaches who leave this industry because they give too much and they don't put the crash pads in for themselves. So know yourself well. If you pile drive yourself, like I pile drive myself, the best gift I ever gave myself was knowing my own rhythm of working hard, needing time to recover, working hard, needing time to recover. And like you said, the rhythm, it is systematized. I don't set goals. I set systems. I set a workflow. I set boundaries. And I think of it like laying down train tracks, where if I put the right train tracks down and I just put my train on the track, I will get to that destination. It doesn't matter the speed so much, but I know that if I do high quality patient care, my clients are happy. I get word of mouth and, Google reviews and stuff like that. Then when I do afternoon admin, the business isn't on fire. And I'm knowing that my QuickBooks is up to date and my bookkeeping is fine and I've handled all the emails. And then when I get to be a CEO, I'm growing and I'm excited and there's projects that are like in the pipeline getting better. I feel like that's the only way you can kind of juggle it all, or you drown. Like it's just too much when you're wearing all the hats.
I think I see another book in your future, but I don't know. I think it'd be interesting. So I'm just putting that bug out there. I think I'd buy it for sure. So, all right, this has been awesome. And so I kind of want to finish with a few different things. One thing I like to get out of a lot of the people I talk to is like books they recommend, or if there was a coach that's just getting started. I know you're a big book person. And so if you could recommend like 2 or 3 books that you feel like were valuable for any new coach. I know we've seen a couple here so far, the Motivational Interviewing for Health and Fitness being one of them. What would be some other books that you might recommend to that kind of brand new coach?
Yeah. So this is a little bit cliche and many people who are listening have probably read it, but good old Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Absolutely.
And the reason I bring this one up is because it's simple, it's useful, it's helpful. If we're in a coaching position, we're in a behavior change, transformational position. We are a guide trying to help people change their behavior. And I think this book does a really good job teaching you how to break that down. I'm trying to think of some of my other all-time favorites. I mean, the one that's also on my home bookshelf, not at my work bookshelf, is I come back and I read this book every year, Essentialism by Greg McKeown. What is most important? It's do less, but better. And those 4 words are so important. I'll say them again. Do less, but better. And he just gives you some of those boundary skills, the saying no skills, the seeing the big picture, thinking. And that's just like a great life book in terms of like caring for yourself. But I go back and forth because I read so many books. It's often just like the right book, the right place, the right time. There's one that's written by, I think, a former Navy SEAL, and it's called Resilience. Hard Won Living for Living a Great Life, something to that extent. But I almost wish every kid in high school was given a copy of that book. It's not so much a stoicism, but it's about like ownership and leadership and like, really taking ownership of the good and the bad in your life and not whining about it. This isn't like a tough love book, but just when you're really ready to accept responsibility, holy smokes, does your life get better? And the last one's kind of silly, so don't judge me, but I love the book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo.
Okay, yep.
Not so much, I'm a minimalist and declutterer at heart, but if you even go into like some of the metaphors of what she talks about, there is this idea of the power of letting go, of not having your life be like a dam where everything comes in and gets stuck. And I think if you look at it past the physical stuff, although I love and appreciate a decluttered space because my creativity is so much better, I think there's a time to cut a project go that isn't working. There's a time to cut relationships go, not again in a toxic way. There's times to let clothes that don't fit you in the back of your closet go. There are times to let old versions of yourself or expectations go. And maybe that's the morph it's taken in my head. Life is like this beautiful river that's always flowing and changing. And I've learned from my cancer journey that you think you have full control over everything. You do not. I can paddle in my canoe and kind of direct that I'm not going to go over and smash into the rocks, but I don't know what's coming around that next turn. I didn't know John Berardi was going to ask me to write for Precision Nutrition. I didn't know someone wanted me to film this nutrition course. And all these great doors opened because I didn't try to cling onto the old. And there were, if I had been too scared to quit varsity hockey to then try varsity rowing, I wouldn't have met my husband and gone to a different city. If I had always stayed a university prof, I probably wouldn't have met you and we wouldn't be having this podcast today.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the life-changing magic of tidying up because the connection to it's okay to let things go because the universe is going to put some really good new stuff in. And so I don't know. I really like that book.
I love it. I like it. So there we go. We'll make sure we put all that stuff in the show notes so people can check them out. All right, let's get into some kind of fun, just rapid fire stuff. Since we've already we've already done this once, so it'll probably go a little bit faster. But all right, taco, burrito, or quesadilla?
Oh, burrito for sure. Less messy. Tacos are too messy. I like tacos, but they're way too messy.
I would agree. For consistency, like you pretty much get a consistent burrito every time. I like tacos for fancy.
Yes.
If I want to get fancy, I want
Yes.
to put some like tuna on it and like some good like slaw. Like I like tacos, but I would agree with you there. All right. Something you've purchased for under $100 that has had a profound impact or disproportionate value on your life.
My steam mop. It was $99 on Amazon. It's a Bissell steam mop.
I love it.
You don't need to have any chemicals. It's so fast to clean your house and it sparkles. I have a smile of joy every week that I steam mop my floors. I love them. I am full-fledged, like middle-aged adult woman, and I am okay with that.
You should send in a video to Bissell. They'll put you on the next commercial. I love it. And you're genuine about it. It's not just like, it's not just for show.
Oh my God. You guys, this is the greatest.
I love it. All right. What cartoon world do you wish you could live in for a week?
Oh, Space Jam was a lot of fun.
Ooh.
I think the mix of the humans and the Space Jam characters together, shooting some b-ball, music, MJ, that would be a good week.
I haven't heard that one yet. That's a really good one. And I haven't even thought about that one.
Yeah.
But you're a hockey player, right?
I think of the soundtrack to that week.
Right.
Yeah, I was a hockey player.
So that's like you're going to the dark side. That's the other winter sport. But you do live in Canada.
I know.
So
I think we invented basketball up here in Canada, like a peach basket or something.
Interesting. I like it. All right. Last one here. If you could have dinner with anyone on the planet, past or present, is anyone you would like to have a conversation with?
Yeah. I'm going to use my answer I gave last time when the tech failed. And it's weird because I don't have an exact name or person.
Mm-hmm.
My answer was I would love to go to dinner with a super old, super happily married couple that lives in their house or lives on a farm. They have a strong, solid, healthy marriage. They've got a great group of friends. They are content, happy, satisfied people, just average people who are old and wise. And what would they share? What advice would they give, through these middle adult years with careers and marriages and friendships and hardships and, looking back, the things that really mattered and the things that didn't matter. That's who I actually would want to go to dinner with.
That's awesome. I bet you could find a few of those, they're around.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I would actually like to do a dinner series to be do one in Europe, do one in Asia, do one in Africa, South American, see the cultural differences in these old, happy, content, married, just regular folks from all over the world.
That would be really interesting. We got a little bit of it in. Have you read Blue Zones? Or you've probably heard of Blue Zones.
I haven't, no.
So it was a National Geographic guy, I can't think of his name, but he basically went and found the areas of the world where people live the longest. And so it's where the most centurions live.
Oh, like the Blue Zones, yeah.
And so, there's probably a lot of couples that are making it into their 90s. And so, but it's different, with the cultures, right? What's someone in the Midwest even versus the South versus the East and West, even in the United States, we're... it's different. It's a different culture when you go to different areas of the U.S. And I would assume it's kind of the same in Canada. But awesome. So if people wanted to find out a little bit more about you and kind of explore the things that you're creating and what you've got going on, what are some of the best places where they can find you?
Yeah. So on the nutrition certification side of things, that would be Prosper Nutrition Coaching. The website is prospernc, as in like nancycat.com, or prospernutritioncoaching.com. Both of those will get you there. Or on my like private practice Nutrition RX side, because we're up in Canada, it is nutritionrx.ca. And then that will link to phone numbers, websites, emails. Cool. But those are probably the two websites that are the easiest. And then I was told I was old because I guess I didn't throw in an Instagram handle, or I was on my last podcast and was like, I think they mean your Instagram. Oh, okay. All right. I'm awkward. So on Instagram for Nutrition RX, I am the word nutrition_RX. And on Instagram, on the Prosper side, it's prosper_NC. And I'm really old because I still don't have a TikTok. So
hey,
there you are.
High five. I'm in the same boat. And so the kids will find you on the socials if they want to find you. So yeah, that's awesome. I love it. Well, Jen, it's always a pleasure. I love chatting with you.
Thank you. So honored to get to be here. Thanks for hanging out, everyone.
See you later.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Coach Catalyst podcast. If you are a coach looking to do more for your clients than just workouts, give Coach Catalyst a test drive. Try it for 14 days. Jump on call with your personal strategy coach, Ashley, and see how easy technology can be, all for free. Tell them Trevor sent you. Until next time, keep changing lives.